Wallace Stevens wrote a poem called Disillusionment of 10 O'Clock. It goes like this. The houses are haunted by white nightgowns. None are green or purple with green rings, or green with yellow rings, or yellow with blue rings. None of them are strange with socks of lace or beaded ceintures. People are not going to dream of baboons and periwinkles. Only here and there an old sailor, drunk and asleep in his boots, catches tigers in red weather. Don't you love this idea of this old sailor drunk and asleep in his boots with this wild, beautiful imagination catching tigers in red weather? I like to think that Wallace Stevens had the old sailor inside him, but you might not have known it from appearances. Wallace Stevens was, after all, in addition to being a poet, a highly successful insurance exec with Hartford Indemnity. And I can just imagine him walking around in nice neighborhoods in his adopted hometown there in Connecticut, bemoaning the stultifying sameness of respectable life. In my vision, he yearns for strange beauty and finds it, maybe via that old sailor inside him, in poetry. Now myself, I've never had to fret too much about being deadened by the poshness of suburbia as I grew up in the country in the poorest region of the nation, the Mississippi Delta. I lived mostly on the Arkansas side in a small community called Pumpkin Bend. And my family, like most families in that part of the world, sometimes struggled financially. But as a child, I never felt poor. And there are many reasons for this. But the most relevant reason for the purposes of this talk, why I never felt poor as a child, is that my father shared with me and encouraged in me endless delight in language. We are both, my father and I, word drunk. And he just has a decidedly Wallace Stevens-like preference for colorful, funny language. I remember when I was a small child, he would tuck me in at night, and sometimes he would say, "Buddy, I hope you go right to sleep and dream about Santa Claus and gooseberry tarts." And I thought, gooseberry tarts? I don't even know what that is. I don't even think Daddy knew what that was. He just had heard this phrase somewhere, and it threw a banquet of color in his imagination, and he liked it. I remember also that my family would sit around and watch Arkansas Razorback sporting events. And there was a basketball player for the Razorbacks with this wonderful name, Sunday Adebayo. And Dad did not care at all about sports. My mother cares a lot about sports. Daddy really doesn't give a flip if the Razorbacks win or lose. But he would sit in the room with us and get out his guitar and start writing a song about Sunday Adebayo. And this would drive my mother crazy. She's trying to watch the game. But in the Delta, we pronounce the word bayou, bio. And so this name, Sunday Adebayo, suggested to Dad the country baptizings that our church would hold Sunday at the bio. And so this is what his song was about. Speaking of church, I remember we had this old man who played a flat top box guitar. His name was Othie Allgood, and Dad just loved this name. I think he wanted to be Othie Allgood. And Othie has been dead now for decades. But to this day, Daddy will just walk into a room of our house when the family are gathered and unaccountably blurt out the question, "Whatever happened to Othie Allgood?" And the last time I was home, I was working on a poem by myself, in a room by myself, and Daddy walked in and said, "Man, want to make him a poem, he got to throw his medulla oblongata into gear." And I knew that the whole point of this is that he loved the word medulla oblongata. I told Daddy this morning that I was doing this talk. I called him, and I mentioned that I was going to be talking a bit about how much he loves funny sounding words. And I said, "Could you just sum up for me your strange relationship with language? And he said, oh, Greg, there's a whole bunch of funny words you can have some fun with. And that about sums it up. I mean, that's pretty much what I do for a living as a poet. Have fun with funny words. I'm very lucky to have a father who has quickened my imagination with his inventive use of language, and I've had a lot of friends who've done the same for me, a lot of friends who are wordsmiths. But more than any friend or family member, poetry has made my mind an interesting place to live. I remember when I was in junior high school, I was reading a lot of poetry, and I was also playing football. And one morning I happened upon T.S. Eliot's drop-dead beautiful poem, The Love Song of J. Alfred Prufrock, a poem that I had never read before. I read it and I was blown away. One of the dominant sensory impressions that I had from this poem was of kind of a cream-colored porcelain, which is a natural thing to take away from this poem. There's a lot of talk of tea time. This is the poem that includes those lines, should I, after tea and cakes and ices, have the strength to force the moment to its crisis. It's the poem many of you have heard. It begins, let us go then, you and I, when the evening is spread out against the sky like a patient etherized upon a table. I was thinking about this poem all day, and I had to go to football practice. And I remember that during a lull in practice, I was standing there on the field, and I saw my friend Johnny Green, a teammate, and I could see through the face mask of his helmet that the whites of his eyes were exactly like this polished ecru porcelain that I had been seeing as I read the Eliot poem, and I was staring sort of creepily at him. And he caught me and accused me of having a crush on him. I just turned away, tried to pretend that nothing had happened. I remember during this time of my life lying in bed at night, unable to sleep because I was luxuriating in poems, in words, in language. And I remember very clearly one night thinking, this is highest delight. It costs nothing, and nobody can take it away from me. Nobody can take it away from me. So I guess I may as well just come right on out and admit I tricked y'all. The title of my talk is a ruse. I thought maybe I could fool y'all into believing that maybe as a poet, I have access to some secret special knowledge that could help you make wise decisions in the difficult times of your life. But the truth is, I'm as confused as y'all are and am thoroughly unqualified to give advice. But when I say that poetry can help you make up your mind, what I really mean is this. When you fall in love with poems, poetry becomes one of the most important things that your mind is made up of. Poetry can help you create and beautify the spiritual space in which you live. If your mind is a gallery, poetry hangs beautiful, wondrous pictures on the wall. If your life is, in some sense, a conversation, poetry makes that conversation so much livelier, so much more interesting. I hope that not a one of you ever falls on hard times, but if you do, and you have to lie down alone like an old soldier in his scuffed boots, you have a mind full of the wildness and beauty and freedom of poems. That way, even if there's not a penny in your pocket or a friend nearby, you'll have a gracious plenty to look forward to. You can catch those tigers in red weather. Thank y'all.